Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We will now start with our program, Government-Led Action to Grow High-Integrity Carbon Markets. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming the Executive Vice President of the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, Mr. Dominic Wertli. Dominic, please.
Okay, everyone. Can you hear me all right at the back? All right. Let's hope the roof holds. Otherwise, we'll make for a very, very interesting set of discussions. But I'd like to welcome you all to this very, very important event to mark the launch of the Coalition to Grow Carbon Markets, Shared Principles and Plan of Action. As was mentioned, my name is Dominic Wertli. I'm an Executive Vice President at the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, and we're proud to be the business partner for this very, very important coalition. Now, this government-led coalition, which is co-chaired by Singapore, the UK and Kenya, has the potential to make a really meaningful impact on global climate action and, importantly, flows of international climate finance. You're all here because you know that carbon markets are an underused tool to price carbon, to enable more ambitious climate action and drive private sector investment into the global carbon transformation. And that's why this coalition is so important. It unites ambitious governments in the current context that we have, committed to scaling credible business use of high integrity carbon credits as part of corporate decarbonisation plans. And I can't underestimate how important two words are in that sentence: high integrity carbon credits. Now, the shared principles were launched last week, and they're a collective government-backed international framework for the use of those high integrity carbon credits. And they've been exclusively and usefully designed with business input to answer business calls for greater clarity and consistency from governments. So if any of you in this room are from the business community, this is a very, very cool initiative, a very cool model which is interacting between that leading group of governments and business to get this right. So I have to congratulate all of the members and drivers of this work. Now, I have to say that what's exciting is that momentum is building for this initiative. The shared principles, I'm delighted to say, have now been endorsed by more than 10 countries. In addition to the 5 founding members of France, Kenya, Panama, Singapore, and the UK, I'm extremely pleased to announce on behalf of the coalition that the principles have now also been endorsed by Canada, Luxembourg, New Zealand, Peru, Switzerland, and Zambia. So thank you very much. And first of all, just give a round of applause to the leadership that has been shown by these countries. Now, these principles have also been welcomed by the Netherlands and South Africa and are reflecting a rapidly expanding global consensus on the use of high-integrity carbon credits in support of global climate goals. The plan for the coalition's work through to COP33, with the vision of the Brazil COP30, is to implement the shared principles, which will be guided by a plan of action. So this is not just a commitment set, this is a delivery vehicle, implementing those shared principles, informed by a business advisory group, which I'm delighted to say is convened by us at the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, so that we ground its work in the needs of business. The coalition is facilitated by a secretariat hosted by the Voluntary Carbon Markets Integrity Initiative. And I'm delighted that the Singapore Pavilion, and everyone trusts the engineering of Singapore. So I'm delighted that the Singapore Pavilion is holding this special session on the coalition's work. And it's great to see so many of you here for this important session. I can't tell you, this is the most amazing lineup of speakers that we've got to go through the coalition today. So I hope you're looking forward to the discussion as much as I am. To begin proceedings, I'm honored and delighted to welcome to the stage Felix Wertli, Swiss Ambassador for the Environment. Sir.
Thank you very much. I will try to speak as loud as Dominic. It's not easy, but I will try my best. Excellencies, delegates, we are very happy to be here in Switzerland and to join the coalition to grow markets and to endorse its shared principles. We have been closely involved in the development of those principles. I'd like to thank Singapore, the UK, Kenya, France and the Secretariat for the hard work, the leadership and excellent collaboration. We all know we are at the crossroad. No, the Paris Agreement has enabled us to achieve a lot. The projected global warming from 4 degrees Celsius is now lowered to 2.3, 2.8, but we are still far from the 1.5 target. So we need all actors to join to close the gap to the 1.5 target. As governments, we have to strengthen NDC ambition implementation, but we also need investments from the private sector. And carbon credits are one of the most important avenues for the private sector to contribute. I just continue. However, we had major criticism over the last years. The private sector has lost faith in the credibility of carbon markets because it was not clear anymore which credit to use and how to ensure investments are perceived positively by different stakeholders. So as governments, we need to give more clarity and certainty on the high quality use of carbon credits. And that's exactly what those standards will contribute to. From the Swiss side, we have the three principles that are of particular importance to us. First one, the mitigation hierarchy. Companies should do their best to reduce emissions first, while using carbon credits as complementary contributions to take responsibility for remaining emissions. The second one is alignment with Article 6, the newest development under the Paris Agreement, and particularly the Article 6.4 finally allows for standardization on methodologies and approaches in the markets. We should use this opportunity in full, and that is why our alignment with Article 6 is probably the most important of the shared principles. The third one is about transparency. Companies should be transparent about which credits they buy, which claims they make, and whether credits are a contribution to NDC implementation or are going beyond. We see this coalition as an important initiative that is complementary to other activities to build the momentum to achieve high-quality carbon markets. We know there are other initiatives looking how we can use NDCs to go beyond the NDCs, and also we and others are very much committed to work together with other nations, countries, to make further progress on the high integrity operationalization of the Paris Agreement crediting mechanism. So, we know we have still some questions to resolve. Honestly speaking, quite a number of questions. But this initiative is an excellent starting point to start to create the ground and common space to make progress for more clarity over the next few years so the private sector can scale up investments. We're very much looking forward to collaboration and thank you very much for organizing and hosting this event today.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Ambassador Wertli. This is why you're such a brilliant ambassador. They say coolness under pressure is the key to life, and you handle that beautifully. And such an important message from Switzerland. I'd very much like to now introduce our second key opener, and that's Jean-Marie Huddleston, who's the Chief Climate Negotiator from Canada. Jean-Marie.
Thank you very much. I will also do my best to speak with a loud voice. So I'll start by saying that Canada is very delighted to be using this event here today to announce that we have also joined the coalition, which we think is such an important development that's really going to serve to advance a clear and urgent goal, and that is to build high integrity carbon markets that mobilize the scale of investment and innovation that the world needs to meet our climate commitments. A lot of the discussions that will be happening here on the ground over the next 2 weeks will focus on finance, about the needs, the need to scale up at a rapid pace, and the need to look at innovative mechanisms and to be able to bring together finances from all sources. With high integrity carbon markets, there really are an underutilized mechanism for pricing carbon and catalyzing that private investment in the global transition to a low carbon economy that is going to be so key, and that is so key right now. So by aligning efforts, businesses and governments can leverage these markets to direct funding towards decarbonization projects that might otherwise lack the necessary financial support through traditional channels. I feel like the universe might be talking to me right now. So basically, I mean, as you know, robust carbon markets can establish that pricing structure that accurately reflects the value of emission reducing and emission removing initiatives. It can help ensure that there is equitable access to capital and underscore the critical role that these efforts play in achieving net zero goals. So in our view, that is the benefit of this coalition for governments to help build that confidence among corporate buyers to voluntarily engage in high integrity carbon markets, advancing both their own climate strategies and decarbonization efforts, and also global ones. So the strong demand in turn generates additional investment for mitigation activities and broader sustainable development benefits. So we look forward to working with other partners through this coalition, and more broadly, we hope others join as well. And we hope that through this, we help encourage companies and other buyers to increase use of high integrity credits in order to meet their net zero commitments and our common global commitment to address climate change. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chief Negotiator Huddleston, for that. Now, our next stage is a panel, but before that, I have to say that it's actually a delight to be here in Brazil. You know, when they say, come to the rainforest. So we're literally experiencing. So I think a hand for Brazil for bringing us right into it. We're in the belly of the beast, and isn't it great to be here? Okay, so now we have an amazing panel to introduce to you. It's my job to kind of introduce the panelists and your moderator. And so in no particular order of fantasticness, I'd like to introduce to the panel the Coalition's 3 co-chairs. Rachel Kite, Special Representative for Climate for the United Kingdom, Ravi Menon, Ambassador for Climate Action Singapore, and Ambassador Ali Mohamed, Climate Change Envoy for Kenya. So welcome. Amazing leadership from you three. I'd also like to introduce some founding members of the Coalition. Juan Monterrey Gómez, Special Representative for Climate Change and National Climate Change Director, Ministry of Environment of Panama. Welcome, sir. And Benoit Faraco, Ambassador for Climate Change Negotiation, Government of France. Now, with such an amazing panel, the only person who could possibly moderate this with a degree of aplomb and focus is our dear friend Nigel Topping, who's co-founder of Ambition Loop, former UK high-level climate champion and chair of the UK's Climate Commission. Nigel.
Just a quick bit of furniture. Quick bit of furniture rearranging. It occurs to me as we all shout to be heard above the rain that there's a metaphor there that I feel like a lot of media keep asking me the question, does this process work? And I think sometimes you have to shout above the skepticism to show all the innovation and collaboration working. And I just really like to lend my voice of congratulations to the coalition for the progress you're making. Seems to be this coalition of the willing, which includes parties and non-parties, is exactly the kind of collaboration that the Brazilians are putting at the heart of their reinvigorated action agenda that is so central to the COP these 2 weeks. So let's get straight into it. I'd like to start with Ravi from Singapore. Ravi, you've been spearheading this initiative along with the co-chairs, but we heard about the principles, but tell us a little bit about how you see these principles actually driving change?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Nigel. I'm not sure. Doing, can you hear me? Okay, good, right. So this is a coalition that sprung up in just less than a year. I remember it was the last COP when we first had these conversations, Rachel and I, and then very soon with Ali, that governments need to do something positive and impactful to send a clear signal that we want to see vibrant, high-integrity carbon markets. And that is born out of the conviction that carbon markets are an indispensable tool for getting private financing for climate action. And we know there are a lot of problems. To be very honest, the carbon markets have suffered from a trust deficit. There have been inflated claims. There have been abuses. There has been greenwashing and so on. And it was good and it was right that these were pointed out. But we said that we are not going to throw out the baby with the bathwater. We got to restore integrity, restore confidence, create an infrastructure, and make this a viable, vibrant market to work. And that's what our coalition is all about. It's a coalition of the willing in the first instance, but more importantly, it's a coalition of the working. We are getting down to doing things and demonstrating things. And as a first order of business, as Nigel said, we asked ourselves, what is the single biggest problem facing the markets today? A lack of confidence on the part of corporates. We do this not out of our own volition. The governments decided to come together to do this in response to business feedback. Corporates telling us, we want to buy credits. I have exhausted my mitigation potential. I can't meet my climate goals. I want to buy credits, but I'm afraid to do so. I'm not sure if I'm doing the right thing. There is a cacophony of voices and advisors and standards out there. I'm not sure if I'm doing the right thing. And that's where governments, we've decided to come in. But working closely with the business community, we took a lot of inputs from the business community and corporates and came out with these shared principles. And we asked them, does this make sense? And they tell us sometimes, no, this is not good enough. Can you provide better guidance? And then we got down to it. And so in less than a year, we've not only formed the coalition, launched the coalition at London Climate Week, up to 10 members now. And now we have an actual product in place, a set of shared principles endorsed by 10 governments that has a strong validation from the business sector. What will this do? I think it will send a strong signal, a strong demand signal that it is kosher to buy high quality, high integrity carbon credits if you've exhausted your mitigation potential. I think that's a clear signal. Not to be distracted by all the other noise in the carbon market space. Clarity about risk disclosures, clarity about what a high integrity carbon credit looks like, clarity that a carbon credit is simply a ton of CO2 either reduced or removed from the atmosphere. Let's not get bogged down by other false dichotomies that have entered the carbon markets debate. So I think that clarity, we believe, will help. I should also add that this is a living document, a work in progress. It is not cast in stone. There will be version 2.0, 3.0. As the market develops, as the industry feeds back to us more inputs on how this can be done better, we're going to continually improve it. And we want to, of course, grow the coalition. We need more countries coming on board. In such a short time, we've got several countries now endorsing the principles. We want to grow this more and create a bigger momentum. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Ravi. You talked about the importance of trust, and of course there are different needs on the supply side and the demand side. So if I can turn to Ambassador Mohamed from Kenya, just say a little bit about how important it is for developed economies to ensure that increased demand for carbon credits that they generate is grounded in the priorities of emerging markets and developing economies, and how the coalition is ensuring that trust of those two different needs is bridged.
Well, thank you very much, Michael, and good afternoon all. It was really a great pleasure to meet Ravi and Kate to push this whole agenda of carbon markets. You will recall that last year in Baku, as developing countries. I was privileged to lead the African group on the negotiations of NCQG, and we were pushing for $1.3 trillion. We eventually got 300 billion. And financing is the most important thing and the most critical thing for climate action. We are here in an implementation conference to look at how we can implement the actions that we all need to make sure that the emissions go down. And financing is a difficult issue. And so we saw that carbon markets is one of the areas that have great potential for us in Africa. Debt-free financing that can be accessed for our actions. Many of our African countries, including my own, are debt distressed. A number of us have already defaulted. And we're looking for ways of accessing finance. And so carbon markets offers us that opportunity. And yes, there is need to make sure that carbon markets works for all of us and works for the solutions of Africa. We have generally nature-based solutions for Africa. We have blue carbon markets and so forth. There is a lot of discussions and move towards other forms of solutions. But we are saying, yes, integrity is important, but yes, we must also make sure that there is fairness in the value and the pricing of carbon so that it supports the money that's flowing from carbon markets to Africa is not just addressing carbon emissions. It is helping communities. It is providing jobs, green jobs. It is improving biodiversity. And all these things are important. But of course, that requires fairness in the value. And so we joined to make sure that from the supply side, because we come from the supply side, we hear what the buyers are saying, what the corporates are saying. But for us, from the supply side, what is important for us is to ensure that carbon markets also, supports the community, supports biodiversity. And that is why we are happy to join. And great, as Ravi has said, we only started less than a year ago, and now we are already 10 countries, and we are seeking more countries. I'm very proud that a number of African countries have joined. We are here with the Minister of Zambia. Thank you very much, sir. And there are many other African countries that have also joined, and we're looking forward to more joining us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Your remarks remind me, I think, of the phrase which your president used at the African Climate Summit a couple of years ago of thinking about climate positive development. So that's the human development, not just the flows of capital that come with it. Rachel, if I could turn to you next. Just tell us a little bit about how the coalition plans to put these shared principles into practice. And if I could just ask you to help the audience also understand the way that it's maybe not just country to country transactions, but also how countries might mobilize corporate demand signals through transition planning like the UK is doing.
So, can you hear me? Very good. So I'm here with my two brothers, and I just want to say that this really is a coalition of the working, and I'm very excited about what we're doing together, and then with France and my other brother from Panama coming on board. This is really a tight group, and we're looking forward and welcoming many others. So it's obvious that the demand signal has been unclear or misunderstood in the last few years. And coming out of this COP, we've got the Brazilian government, pushing on an open coalition on carbon pricing, which is a great thing. This coalition is growing, which is about the voluntary markets, and then goes further, which is a great thing. And we've got people talking about having unified taxonomies. This is a good thing. I'm really hoping that at the end of this COP, we can have this massive movement and message that valuing nature and investing in it, and then not just nature, right, but the other ways in which we can generate credits, is the way that we are going to start bringing new streams of revenue at scale, at pace, where they're needed, when they're needed, into the countries that need to benefit from that 1.3 trillion. So we're going to do three things. We're going to focus on policy. We are not prescriptive. How Singapore is sending signals to its private sector is different from how we in the UK will send signals to our private sector, and that's just fine. It's as long as it works, right? So we've been out with consultation on voluntary carbon market principles. We've been out on consultation with what a transition pathway should look like for a firm domiciled in the UK, whether that should be regulated, whether that should be voluntarily suggested that you have a transition. But that's all going to be coming to ministers' desks for decisions in the coming weeks. So we're not saying that you must do this, a carbon tax, you must do this, you must have a mandatory regulated transition pathway. We're saying what works for you, but the point is that there should be a clear signal to the private sector that it will be recognised, rewarded, potentially incentivised, that it do the right thing. But again, very much listening to Ravi, this isn't in place of managing your mitigation measures, right? This is once you've exhausted that, then can you do this? The second thing is that we will look at how we can mobilise capital and get some of the issues around equitable pricing and access to the market sorted out. So this is really about the engagement with the buyers and finding ways to continue the dialogue between buyers and governments that are regulating. I can see Chris Leeds and the Standard Chartered team in the room. We've just done some fantastic workshops in Indonesia over the last year, helping the Indonesians regulate on the basis of clear signals from buyers about what they need and how they want it. And then thirdly, we'll be working on how to develop the market. So this is a broader conversation around consistent guidance, a clear sense of what is going to happen over the next few years so that companies can plan their strategies, understanding that this market is going to slowly but move in one direction. I think the sort of herky-jerky, on again, off again, do we like it, do we not like it, are we regulating it, are we not regulating it, has really been a large part of the stymieing of the growth of the market. So, Coalition of the Working, 3 things to do, join us, and this is, I think, a place where we are not afraid to have to do the good. We can't continue to have the perfect drive out the good when developing countries are in such desperate need of reliable, sustainable revenue streams.
I think that point of not having the perfect drive out the goods is a really important one, Rachel. Thank you. And Benoit, if I could turn to you from a French perspective, maybe you could build on Rachel's thought about how important it is that the coalition retains international consistency and balances that with the need for local flexibility.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Hi everyone, and first of all, let me thank Singapore for welcoming us to this beautiful pavilion, but also Kenya and the UK for launching this conversation and this coalition. It's very important because, I mean, from an EU perspective, like 5 years ago, if you were mentioning carbon credits, you were a bad guys. I know I'm so happy to be the big guy in the room because I will be one of the biggest buyers of credit in the world, and it only happens in 5 years. And if we can follow on the weather in Belém, it has been a sunny road with a lot of storms and on the path on carbon credits. And I think, I mean, in this conversation today with buyers, sellers, and traders in the room, we are the big guys, and we can make a difference. And I'm so happy to be here in this frame today. I think that for us, because I mean, as the buyers with the UK, with Canada, with Switzerland, probably others joining in the course of COP and next year, we have the potential to be norm setters on this carbon credit stuff, and it's super important because I totally support what my friend Ali said on the supply side. It's super relevant and super important to give constant clarity on the quality of credit that goes well beyond the concept of just a carbon tons. It will be super relevant to drive finance, to improve also domestic framework in terms of accountability of carbon, but also sometime on biodiversity. And with the UK, we have been thinking also about the next generation of carbon credits, which are carbon on credits that also include a component on biodiversity. But of course, the social dimension is very important. And I think that if we look in terms of what is our collective perspective today, I will use an analogy with French cuisine. You know, we are quite a little bit bizarre in France in a way, because we still think that if it's super expensive, it must be super tasty. And if it's not expensive, it's not French cuisine. So the challenge, I mean, on carbon credits for me, it's to have like super tasty credits at the cheapest price possible if we want to basically drive all this investment together. And let me just finish by explaining what we've done in France during the stormy weather on carbon credits, because we were working with our companies, with our airlines, but also all the companies who want to make a climate neutrality claim, saying, hey guys, it's okay, you want to do that, welcome on the table, but you do this under the supervision of a regulatory body led by the government. And it was super powerful because we discovered that we can have super tasty credit at quite accessible cost, and it's a very, very good news that demonstrates that government can not only like buy credits to reach their targets, but also encourage all the private company to do a little bit more. And I think that at the end of the day, this super coalition of working will deliver greater result even if stormy weather come back at some point. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Benoit. And actually, you just reminded me of just how much anger there was directed at the very idea that markets might have a role in as recently as COP26, when Mark Carney was really trying to promote the opportunity here and the need for us to do the kind of work you're doing. And there were some very, very angry reactions. So it has also taken courage, which I think is worth recognizing from all of you here. Final voice, but by no means least, Juan Carlos from Panama. You've been a member of the coalition from the beginning. This is the COP of implementation, the COP of action. What do you want to see happen next?
It is the COP of implementation, but it's also the COP of the truth. So let me review some truth for all of you before I get into my answer. Truth number one, what we have done in the past does not work. We have been going at it for 33, 34 years, and we're still stuck. We have not stabilized greenhouses in the atmosphere the way we promised 33 years ago. My age, by the way, just to put it out there. Truth number two, communities are drowning, but also our bureaucrats, because we're drowning on reports, on overcomplicated systems, on overcomplicated reporting frameworks that do not allow us to have time to actually go and help those communities that are drowning near the coast. But also private sector and companies are drowning with frameworks and different standards that are getting thrown at them and they cannot fully digest. Truth number three, we as government have miserably failed at simplifying this process and making it easy for every actor to engage. For the past 30 plus years, we have been engaging in these acronyms and standards and report soup that basically makes this elite group of people that come to the COP be the only people that actually understands what happens at the COP. So departing from that, in terms specifically of carbon market, we're part of this coalition because number one, simplicity. We have some shared principles that we all apply in our domestic markets to the best of our abilities and based in our capabilities. Together, we have more credibility. Together, we also send a signal of confidence to those buyers that are looking for credits that are high standard. And I don't mean to correct my French friend over here, but we're not looking for the cheapest. We're looking for the most fair price. Just to put it out there, not the cheapest. Panama will not be selling cheap credits. We're going to be selling high integrity credits following the very tasty, the most tasty, definitely the most tasty. And that was the other point, the fair value. So many credits have been sold at a price that was not adequate, that we need to be able to sell the credits at a value that is fair, especially if they are very tasty. And this point on biodiversity, I definitely agree that is the next frontier. We're not only finalizing the rules for domestic carbon market, which is going to apply these principles. We're going to have a standard so that both companies that have to report through mandatory compliance, but also those that could be able to participate in a voluntary basis, will have a full standard, informed and guided by this principle to make sure that everybody is following the same steps. But that applies both on the demand side So companies, they measure the carbon footprint in a standardized fashion in Panama, following the same steps, but also for the production or generation of these credits. So we're part of this coalition because we need to do new things, we need to do things differently, and we need to bring the market and the private sector into decision making. So thank you so much for counting on Panama for this, and we're here for the long term. Thank you.
Well, with that, let me just ask everyone to put their hands together to thank the panel. This to me is a great example of that new Brazilian word we've all learned, mutirão. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, we're going to now transition to the next panel. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Which takes a look at the kind of interaction between the public and the private side. But who'd have thought you'd come here for a discussion about cuisine and cooking and very tasty credits, which are the best value possible. I love that. So thank you very much for that. Okay. So we're going to have a short discussion here, then we've got a couple of ministerial wrap-ups at the end to underscore the importance of this coalition. So I'm very, very delighted to welcome to the stage for this discussion, first of all, Cristina Rodriguez, the General Director of Climate Change and Desertification, Ministry of Environment, Government of Peru. Cristina, you're very welcome. And also Antonia Gabal, Global Director of Sustainability and Partnerships at Google. Antonia, you're very welcome. Okay, so Cristina, Antonia, welcome very much to the conversation. I hope you got the kind of feel of it that we'll probably have to project ourselves to the back of this very, very busy pavilion for this short conversation. But we heard a lot very much from the public sector side already, and the importance of having shared principles that every government could then adopt to suit their national circumstances. We heard a little bit on the demand side, and we heard a little bit on the supply side. And so kind of want to dig into that a little bit further. So Cristina, if I can come to you first. It's such an important perspective that you bring from Peru, but how do we ensure that this supply side of the market, the important benefits that you would hope to get from that flow of finance, the quality of the projects kind of works? What would be your advice to the group and your thoughts and hopes for the coalition on the supply side of the equation?
Thank you, Dominic, and good afternoon to everybody. Thanks also for the chance to be here and talk a little bit about Peruvian experience. Well, the coalition goals align to ensure equitable access to private capital, to recognize the critical role of emerging and developing economies as supply markets in achieving the global net zero goal. The only way to ensure true market integrity is by guaranteeing that global guidance generally supports the creation of high integrity supply on the ground. In this regard, as it was mentioned before for you, we join the principles, and we are committed to work to move forward and adequate for the adequation and successful implementation. Having participated in the shared principle elaboration, we will continue this multilateral work, ensuring their implementation aligns to our national circumstances and through our MIR tools. We also have our national register of mitigation measures, and in this COP we're going to announce the first project that is be registered. And also we have a Peru carbon footprint. So we want, of course, assure that we consider all these improvement in the country and as a supply market. So we are convinced that this will be robust governance and legal certainty. Yeah.
That's wonderful to hear. And you mentioned these principles a couple of times, which seem to be quite an important piece of the coalition. What would you look for in those principles to make sure that the supply side, is high integrity? What would be your thoughts that you'd like to see?
Well, for us, is we of course want a high integrity in carbon market, and for us, this is very important to give, as other panels here say, that bring trust to the private sector, and for us also be sure that this is fair when we implement. So for us, when we saw and evaluate both the principles and a coalition, we were sure that it matched with what our priorities in carbon market, and for that reason, we want to continue to support this implementation.
And that was a very important word. I don't know if you caught that in the intervention there, but trust. And I think as much as the technical side of this, the coalition and the way that Peru and others are entering into it, is a spirit of building trust in a world where that is kind of a bit in short supply sometimes. And through trust and mutual respect, one can create and implement the principles. So thank you so much for that intervention. So Antonia, you represent Google in this discussion, and a lot has been said already. If you like, in this panel on the demand side of the equation. There's quite an aspiration that done right, with trust built and with good principles, there will be hopefully a lot of engagement from large companies, maybe yours, maybe others, to make the most of this coalition. But maybe slightly outside of the exact nature of this coalition. I mean, Google, you've been doing a lot of thinking about carbon removals and CDR and these things. I mean, how do you approach this, and what kind of principles do you apply and look for as you go about this business?
Thank you, Dominic. And it's a pleasure to be here in this very busy hall. So I think I would add to trust the spirit of dialogue, which is why we're here, because I think as these initiatives develop and grow, having dialogue with the private sector is so important. And part of that for us is really about sharing our learnings, right? As Google, we have been driving decarbonization in our business for a number of years now, and in line with the mitigation hierarchy, as was said, very focused on directly reducing the emissions of our operations. And we also know that there's a number of residual emissions which will be hard to abate, hard to remove. And so we need to start also investing in carbon removal solutions, for which there's a significant volume still left in the atmosphere that we need to remove. And so this notion in the principles of the mitigation hierarchy I would start with is so incredibly foundational and important to this initiative. So that's kind of our first starting principle, is reduce and then look at those removals. The second, and I noted this in the principles, is about how do we disclose those projects. I think Google goes a step further, is currently we are very directly invested in our projects. Every single project that we're doing, from the concept of carbon removals, we are there on the ground with our partners, because we're also trying to help improve and drive progress in the measurement and the verification of those carbon reductions, also using technology to do so. So how do you become radically transparent in terms of those projects, but also really, really improve the integrity of those investments and improve the measurement that we need to scale? And of course, report those projects, which we already do in our environmental reports. The other piece that I'll just mention, and we can get to discussion as well, is this idea of a portfolio of solutions, also noted, is so important. I think we know, for example, on one hand that there is no better carbon sink than nature. So how do we really invest and build solutions that are nature-based, but again, high integrity? We invested in a coalition called the Symbiosis Alliance, which is really about identifying projects, but also building the measurement frameworks that help us ensure that the progress is true and is there in terms of those investments. The other type of solution that we're investing in is what we call super pollutants. So methane is an incredibly powerful, short-lived gas that we have in our atmosphere today. Greenhouse gas potential far outstrips that of greenhouse gas emissions. So we're investing in super pollutants, which we recognize are short-lived. So how do we think about the replacement value of those types of investments as we think about these types of architectures? The third thing that I'll just mention is some of the technologies that we need to remove carbon are very nascent, and they're very expensive. And so we can be a first mover in helping to test those technologies, bring those technologies to market, but we really need mechanisms to scale. we need to scale these types of solutions because, again, the volumes of carbon in the atmosphere that we need to reduce are so significant that we can't wait. We don't have the time to wait for a decade, 15 years to start investing in these carbon removal solutions. And so that's why we're really trying to push kind of the agenda faster in that way as well.
Brilliant, Antonio. Thank you so much. Kind of thoughtful and detailed answer. There's a lot in there to unpack, but just a couple of things. Is the mitigation hierarchy. So this is not a get out of jail card for businesses. There's a lot to do to decarbonize, but then there is that residual. And you also mentioned the dynamic, so that suggests that this is not a 2050 agenda, but maybe we can find ways to create incentives for 2030, given that that's just around the corner, and indeed a global stocktake in 2028, which I think would be appealing to some of the countries in the club, which is move faster, and kind of try this out and see what works. But you also mentioned the spirit of collaboration, and making sure that this kind of collaboration, coalition really does properly create collaboration. It's very hard for folks in the public sector and those in the business sector to find vehicles where you can properly and deeply interact and collaborate. So maybe this could become a pretty good model. And then I think the final thing that you said, which is very important for people listening, is a balanced portfolio. Yes, there are maybe nature-based solutions and landscapes and forests. There are also, as you said, kind of super pollutants up there, which can also relate to agriculture and things like this, the methane. And there are areas of more technical direct capture, which we have to look at all of these things, because these will be very important both for developing as well as developed countries. So there's some good food for thought there. Just, Antonio, while we've got you here and you've kind of seen the ambition of the countries from emerging, developing and richer countries, and you've seen some of the vision and ideas that they put out, what kind of reflections or advice would you offer that group of how they might engage business in a more substantive way?
I guess all I would say is that we're happy to share our experience. I think our teams have been hard at work on the ground, really trying to make these investments in the technologies, in the projects, and we learn a lot as we go about doing that. And so we're always here and happy to share that experience, share our learning, share what's working, share what's not working, understand where we're seeing impact, where there might be challenges, to really just help inform the coalition as it's going through its work. And I think we say this really for any work. We're always here to share the work that we're doing, share the experience as well.
That's amazing. So I'm sure there's a huge body of experience that you've amassed in Google so far on this. So round of applause, thank you very much for Cristina Rodriguez of the government of Peru and Antonio Gargle of Google. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay. We're moving towards the closing element of this launch of the government-led action to grow high-integrity carbon markets. And this is a super important piece of the agenda, because we've heard from the special envoys, if you like, and we've heard from some experts, we've heard from the public and private, but now we come to the space where we really hear from the real deal. It's so exciting to have a couple of ministers with us to share their thoughts on this. So first up, I'm extremely delighted to welcome the Honourable Mike Elton Mposha, Ministry of Green Economy and the Environment for Zambia, who are an endorser and a member of this new coalition. Sir, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Moderator, Your Excellencies, the co-chairs of the coalition. May I simply say, ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to join this important occasion of the high-level event of the coalition on growing carbon markets. Coordinator or Moderator, Zambia is proud to endorse the shared principles for high integrity carbon credit use and to join the coalition to grow carbon markets. As a country, we view high integrity carbon market as a catalyst for mobilizing climate finance, accelerating delivery of our NDC targets, and unlocking inclusive green growth. This endorsement builds on Zambia's recent adoption of our national carbon market framework, which positions the country to attract private investment into high-impact mitigation projects that benefit both the people and the planet. As a country, by implementing both Article 6 cooperative approaches and voluntary carbon markets frameworks, Zambia shares the coalition's vision to strengthen trust, transparency, and alignment across global carbon markets. With the leadership of the co-chair countries such as Singapore, Kenya, and the United Kingdom, Zambia has no doubt that the coalition is destined to succeed. Your Excellencies, Mr. Moderator, Zambia has taken carbon market as an important and integral part of our climate action, as we strongly believe that the market makes a significant contribution in raising ambition, but is also an important source of innovative financing which spurs economic growth. As a result, we have worked hard to put in place an enabling policy framework or environment which is now supported by robust legislation. The carbon market framework, which have now been converted into regulations, provides a useful guide and predictable process in undertaking carbon market projects in the country. In addition, the bilateral agreements we have signed recently with like-minded countries have also enhanced our credibility in the market as a trusted partner. We also place a high premium on transparency in our operations in facilitating implementation of carbon projects, as we consider this a key element of trust in the market. The synergies between our philosophy of the carbon market as well as the principles of the coalition are so clear. It is from this background that Zambia found it easy to quickly endorse these principles and also declare our membership just a few weeks ago. And I'm here to reaffirm our endorsement and the confidence that we have in the leadership of the coalition. We therefore call on other countries to consider joining this progressive coalition so that together we can grow credible carbon markets we can be proud of. As I conclude, let me thank the co-chairs of the coalition for inviting Zambia to join this important coalition. You can count on Zambia as a credible and reliable partner committed to be a reliable member of this coalition. Thank you very much for inviting us.
Well, thank you, Minister, for those incredibly erudite remarks. Now, it's an absolute delight and our collective honor to be able to invite to the podium Rohmat Marzuki, who is the Vice Minister of Forestry for Indonesia. Sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. Excellency Mike Elton Maposa, Minister of Green Economy and Environment, Republic of Zambia, Climate Envoys of France, Kenya, Switzerland, Singapore, and the United Kingdom, distinguished representative of Canada and Peru, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me first to express Indonesia's appreciation to the government of Singapore, co-chair of the Coalition to Grow Carbon Markets, for hosting this important event dedicated to advancing collective government action to mobilize private sector finance through carbon credit markets. Indonesia commends the leadership of the governments of Kenya, the United Kingdom, Singapore, France, and Panama in convening this coalition. We recognize the importance of promoting high integrity carbon markets as a vital part of global efforts to accelerate climate action and mobilize finance for sustainable development. Indonesia shares the same commitment to ensuring that carbon markets are credible, transparent, and beneficial to both people and nature. We value the inclusive process and the shared principles that seek to guide companies and governments toward the high integrity use of carbon credits. These principles reflect many of Indonesia's key priorities, such as environmental integrity, social safeguards, and fair benefit sharing. Indonesia is currently strengthening its national carbon market architecture, notably the recently issued Presidential Regulation number 110 in 2025 on carbon economic value. Our strategy is clear: to build a strong, inclusive, and globally connected carbon market ecosystem. Indonesia must ensure clarity of rules, align national MRV standards with global practices, adopt state-of-the-art technology, attract institutional investors to finance nature-based solutions, mitigation projects, and aim for interoperability with global carbon markets. Indonesia highly appreciates the spirit of collaboration embodied in this coalition. At this stage, Indonesia welcomes the shared principles. We will continue to follow its development closely and engage constructively in dialogues that foster mutual understanding and coherence between national system and global initiatives. Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, Indonesia remains ready to work together with all partners to ensure that carbon markets truly deliver high integrity outcomes, not only reducing emissions, but also improving livelihoods, supporting new sources of economic growth, conserving biodiversity, and advancing sustainable development for all. With this, I conclude my remarks and I thank you.
Thank you, Vice Minister Marzuki, for those excellent remarks. So that brings us to the end of this journey. It feels like a journey. Remember the beginning, those of you who've been with us all the way through. Now the skies have cleared, the sun is coming through. So it's been a beautiful hour or so together. What have we learned? We've learned that the past week has shown momentum for this coalition. It is growing fast. We're welcoming new members: Canada, Peru, Switzerland, Zambia, New Zealand. We have people who are welcoming the principles. There is momentum growing on this, and thank you, Minister, for your amazing intervention. 10 plus countries and growing. It's so exciting to see what will happen next. People are following this closely, as you rightly said, Vice Minister. And we heard from business to kind of say that, yeah, there's quite a lot of experience from the business side. Let's kind of share what we know and make this work in a practical sense. So if you want to find out more, the Coalition to Grow Carbon Markets.org is where you go. That's where you'll find the principles. That's where you'll find all the key collaborators. Thank you to all of our speakers. Thank you in particular to Singapore for hosting us in your wonderful pavilion. And with that, we'll close the discussion. Thank you very much, everyone.